Hello everyone and welcome back. If you are watching this video, today it is Saturday and it's actually just after midday and I'm in the office doing some work. There's never a time when folks don't need us, and there's never a bad time to give them that help. But in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how a Marchman Act can become a Baker Act. And so let me sort of give you the factual scenario. So what's interesting about the Marchman Act and Baker Act is that actually they can be initiated the same three ways: law enforcement, a qualified professional, or somebody runs to the courthouse and files a petition. Now, when it comes to the Baker Act, most of the time it involves law enforcement being called to the scene and they initiate the Baker Act, or sometimes perhaps emergency medical folks get called to the scene and the person gets transported to a hospital, and then the qualified professional, which is typically the on-call psychiatrist, he or she initiates the Baker Act. The Marchman Act can also be initiated that way, but I've only, I think, encountered one, if not two counties in the entire state of Florida that will actually have law enforcement or a qualified professional actually execute or initiate, I should say, the Marchman Act. It's typically initiated by somebody going to the courthouse, normally with a lawyer who represents them, to file a petition to start the Marchman Act process. And just for clarification, Marchman Act is dealing with primary substance use, and the Baker Act is dealing with a mental health crisis. So in this particular instance, somebody was found asleep in their car. A neighbor panicked and thought they had perhaps overdosed, although there was no evidence to support that other than the fact they were asleep in their car. And the police got called, and they actually Marchman Acted this individual, and they took him to a local hospital. And in fact, when he went, he was told, "We just want to get you checked out, and once you're medically stabilized, you'll be released." Well, he got to the hospital, and the hospital decided that this was initially going to be a Marchman Act, and they were going to hold him under the Marchman Act, which again is an initial 72-hour hold. And then they had a change of heart and said, "No, we're not going to keep him as a Marchman Act. We're going to keep him as a Baker Act." And I suspect, although I don't know for sure, but this is just sort of my gut feeling based on my experience of doing this, that perhaps there was nowhere to take him based on the Marchman Act, which would have needed to be something for primary drug use. But every county in the state of Florida has at least one, if not two, Baker Act receiving facilities, so it was a whole lot easier to detain him under the Baker Act, despite the fact there is absolutely zero evidence that he even meets Baker Act criteria. There was no evidence that he was having a mental health crisis. There was no evidence that he was looking to self-harm. And so they're detaining him under the Baker Act, and they're going to transfer him to a Baker Act receiving facility where he potentially could get locked up for an extended period of time, the maximum being 6 months. And if you don't think it can happen, I've seen it happen, and I've had calls from families when it happened, and then they called us after the fact and said, "Can you fix this?" The answer to which is yes, but it takes considerably longer to get somebody out after a judge has already entered a court order. And so this is a case where he was initially detained under the Marchman Act, and then the hospital converted him to a Baker Act, despite the fact that he doesn't meet criteria. And of course, he had a very stressed and worried mom who reached out to us, and she said, "Well, how can this happen?" And I said, for two reasons. Number one, nobody knows he's there. In other words, there's no supervision going on here at the hospital, right? They're not reporting to anybody that they've detained this individual. And two, because they are licensed as an agent of the state's mental health system, you can't sue them for this stuff, so they don't care. And that's how it happens. Once you are in Florida's mental health system, it's a very long, dark, proverbial rabbit hole. And if you don't fight to get somebody out as quickly as you possibly can, they can get so far down that proverbial rabbit hole that it becomes very difficult, if not impossible, to get them out. And so, as I have said over and over again, and I apologize for sounding like a broken record, once you get detained, or once your loved one gets detained, you should fight immediately to get them out, because the longer they're there, the harder it is to get them out. And so I wanted to share that with you, just another sort of twist on the whole Baker Act broken system here in Florida. But these videos are real world. They're based on real cases. They're based on real experiences myself and my team have had with these cases. And this is how it really works. Not how it works on Google, not how it works in the statute, but in the real world, how these cases are handled and frankly mishandled. Anyway, with that said, thank you for tuning in. I would love the thumbs up. And if you could subscribe to the channel, I'd be grateful. Thank you. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.